Esther 4:1-17. Mordecai informs Esther of the king's proclamation and he entreats her to speak to the king. Esther indicates that to do so puts her life at risk. Mordecai said to Esther, "Maybe it was for a time like this that you were made queen." Mordecai asked for Esther's help. When Mordecai learned of all that has been done, he tore his clothes in anguish. Then he dressed in sackcloth, covered his head with ashes, and walked through the city, wailing loudly and bitterly, until he came to the entrance of the palace. He did not go in because no one wearing sackcloth was allowed inside. Throughout all the provinces, wherever the king's proclamation was made known, there was loud mourning among the Jews. They fasted, wept, wailed, and most of them put on sackcloth and lay in ashes. When Esther's servant woman and eunuch told her what Mordecai was doing, she was deeply disturbed. She sent Mordecai some clothes to put on instead of the sackcloth, but he would not accept them. Then she called Hathach, one of the palace eunuchs appointed as her servant by the king, and told him to go to Mordecai and find out what was happening and why. Hathach went to Mordecai in the city square at the entrance of the palace. Mordecai told him everything that has happened to him and just how much money Haman had promised to put into the royal treasury if all the Jews were killed. He gave Hathach a copy of the proclamation that had been issued in Susha, ordering the destruction of the Jews. Mordecai asked him to take it to Esther, explaining the situation to her, and have her go and plead with the king and beg him to have mercy on her people. Hathach did this, and Esther gave him this message to take back to Mordecai. If anyone, man or woman, goes into the inner courtyard and sees the king without being summoned, that person must die. That is the law. Everyone from the king's advisor to the people in the provinces knows that. There is only one way to get around this law. If the king holds out his gold scepter to someone, then that person's life is spared. But it has been a month since the king sent for me. When Mordecai received Esther's message, he sent her this warning. Don't imagine that you are safer than any other Jew just because you are in the royal palace. If you keep quiet at a time like this, help will come from heaven to the Jews, and they will be saved. But you will die, and your father's family will come to an end. Yet who knows? Maybe it was for a time like this that you were made queen. Esther sent Mordecai this reply. Go and get all the Jews in Susha together. Hold a fast and pray for me. Don't eat or drink anything for 3 days and nights. My servant woman and I will be doing the same. After that, I will go to the king, even though it is against the law. If I must die for doing it, I will die. Mordecai then left and did everything that Esther had told him to do. Mordecai asked Esther to approach the king to tell him about the plan. To plead with him and beg him to have mercy on her people. Esther at first told Mordecai that it's the law, that she can't go to the king without being summoned. And everyone knows that if anyone does that, they will be killed unless the king pardons them. Mordecai told Esther that if she doesn't do it, then God will deliver the Jew some other way. But she will perish. But that I think the phrase that really affected her was that who knows, it was maybe for this very event that she was put as queen for a time as this. And I really Yeah, I think that phrase, for such a time as this, that is the phrase that has been with me all my life. And I love the story of Esther, and I love that phrase from the story of Esther. And I think it's very true that I think in all of our lives, God put the people around us and God put us in a particular situations. And even though we might not know what, even though it might be good or bad, but there's always something that I think He wants us to learn from the experience or do. And there are people He put into positions that you know that will serve a greater purpose. So, well, I guess I can't really explain it well, but definitely the phrase for such a time as this really resonate with me as I live my life. And it's just, who knows, like, for example, when I went to jury duty, I felt like, yeah, maybe I'm here and I was chosen for a purpose so that I can serve in that capacity for my country and ultimately for the purpose of God, for the purpose of justice, to use my life experiences, to use who I am as a person, because probably He chose, each one of that person, He allowed them to be chosen for a specific purpose. So I think, just like those kind of thought makes like everyday work or it helps you to kind of like focus on God and doing everything. And example, in the New Testament it said, do everything as if you're doing it unto the Lord. And I think that this message really coincides with that message, to help you focus that your work is not only of temporal value. And so when you make a decision, you have to make it for an eternal purpose, not for for a temporal purpose. Yes, I think this warning has indicates that God is at work in any circumstances, and it even like implies that God knew that this was going to happen, and so God put Esther in a position where she can make a decision. And I think He knows her heart. He knows what kind of person she will become, and so he chose her because He knows that she will make the decision that will be honoring, and He will use her to save the Jews. Yep. I think so. Message 15 to 16 is what she sent to Mordecai, that to pray for her, fast for her for 3 days and 3 nights, and she would do the same, and she would do what he asked, and if she dies, she dies. And I think that's a testimony to Mordecai's faith, because he raised her to be such a strong woman of principle and of trust in God, and that she would consider death, a physical death, to be, nothing compared to her service for God, to doing the right thing. And I think that's character, that's integrity, and that's a person whose heart is totally aligned, who give their life, who give everything totally aligned with God. She doesn't mind, dying. And of course, there might be other consequences if she doesn't die, like she might lose her position as a queen. lose her wealth, lose her status, everything like that. But she is able to give all that up for the glory and for the purpose of God. And that is character to me. That's the character that I want to have, and that's the character that I want my kids to have. Amen.